All right. My name is Sarah, product manager for the Monitor team, and we are doing a walkthrough of alert management minimal so that we can plan the first simulation day for GitLab's SRE team. So starting from the welcome page of a project repository, to get to the alerts list, I'm just going to navigate from operations to alerts. Nope, that's metrics. So what we're looking at is a list of all of the alerts that have come in through our alert endpoint, but also from any GitLab managed Prometheus or externally managed Prometheus. Right now, those are actually different endpoints, but we're doing work to consolidate them so that we just have one alert endpoint. I've used curl command to create an example one for you that we can work through and create an issue on. It's not very creative, just says incident title. But you've got a couple different options here for organizing these. Clicking on the column headers gives you ascending or descending. You've got tabs to organize them by status, or an all alerts tab if you wanted an overview of everything that you have open. The open tab is going to contain everything that is triggered and acknowledged. So the one that I created, I've got the ability to take action on, and then I'm going to dive in. So the overview is a bit sparse because this is something that I created myself, and I don't have a ton of details in here. But the overview is going to contain all, man, I think there's 6 to 8 fields that GitLab requires and then highlights in the overview. So that'd be something we'd be looking for feedback, which would be, you know, what information is interesting for you in that area. And the alert details is going to be the key value pairs or everything else that we find in the payload and then separate out. Once I've deemed this critical or important, I can create an incident issue from it. So that's going to port the summary, which is all those required GitLab fields, followed by the payload. It looks a little weird. I don't know why it didn't give us. Clement, I think that the whole payload should have been posted here. Do we know? We'll look
I haven't
at
been
that.
following this part, but I can look into that.
Okay. The description is going to contain the summary, which are those 6 to 8 fields that we've deemed important and required. Put them at the top, followed by the payload. And then the remainder of this is the issue template that we've decided to use for incidents. So your team has one of those, and that'll just appear below everything else that we're putting at the top of the description. Now that we've created this, if you were to navigate back to alerts, and you're on the one that we were using, we remove the option to create another incident because there's one accessible, and I can navigate to the incident from there. A handful of other things that already exist. I'm going to demo it. 1 second. Let me get a link to this Zoom meeting. How do I access? I'm trying to get the URL for this meeting while I'm sharing my screen. No one knows how to do that. Okay.
I think you can get it in the participants button.
There's also,
I am there.
There's also an eye in the upper left-hand corner. I don't know if you can see it. If you're looking at the Zoom window, when you're seeing like your screen, like in the upper left-hand corner, there's an information button.
I'll just grab this guy.
Okay.
There we go. So this is something that we created last year, which gives you a way to associate Zoom meetings with an issue. This is not an integration. We are just parsing it to recognize a Zoom URL, and then we embed it at the top of the issue. We plan on pursuing an integration with Zoom in the future. We did discovery on that last year and deemed it to be too complicated for the amount of time we had to spend on it. But that's a really nice way to include an obvious way. I know that you guys have an incident management response crisis room. One thing to look out for in this particular feature is you've resolved this and you've closed it. You're going to want to remove that because it will persist and someone can click on it. So I don't know what security you have wrapped around or if you have access or passwords for that. If you do, then you may not necessarily need to remove it, but to remove it, you can just do that. And that is our end-to-end incident management, alert management flow as of now. I'm happy to dive into what's coming up next, but I'm hoping that this gives us the ability to do a first simulation day.
No, it doesn't. I have a couple questions if you
Great.
wouldn't mind.
Yeah.
So what happens when you close the alert? You resolve it. What happens to the related issue?
So right now, nothing happens.
That's great.
In the future, okay, good.
Because we the way that we're using and you'll see this next week when we have the simulation, which I need to send an invite out for. I just need to get an EOC volunteer. I have an IMOC volunteer, but we actually persist the issue past the incident resolution. So our equivalent right now is like we resolve the PagerDuty alert. We would be resolving this alert, but we would want the issue to persist because the issue also contains the review. Because I'm gathering metrics between, like, there's a whole incident workflow where we go from incident active to mitigated to resolved to like review scheduled and review completed. And so the issue stays open the entire time. So it's a good thing that resolving the alert does not close the issue. And then
What about, sorry, quick question for you. I think I'll ask my question and then I'll caveat it. When you close your incidents, you've completed everything, you've completed the review, you'll have action after action items, so on and so forth. At this point, your alerts have been resolved because you've mitigated the problem. Do your systems send recovery alerts in?
No.
Okay, so I've got functionality planned so that if I were to close this issue, alerts associated with it would resolve in GitLab.
Yeah, because that could be a case. That is actually helpful because we do sometimes open up an incident issue and it's not needed. We just open it up because we think we're seeing something, we got an alert, but then we end up like doing the steps of like, okay, we're just closing this out because it's a non-issue, and then we resolve the alert separately. So I think that's actually a helpful thing.
Okay, great, excellent.
And then a couple other questions I have. I've read through a bit of the documentation on how to trigger an alert, and I see that there's an integration available in our project that we use for this. My question is there a way to manually trigger? It didn't look like there was. Like sometimes I just want to be able to click a button and page somebody, or basically create an alert and use that as a tool. But it looks like we're bound to API at this point.
Do you want to, question for you, because I've got a couple of issues to solve that problem for you. Mm-hmm. Is your desired workflow to create an alert and page somebody, or would you be creating an incident to page somebody? And maybe is that an important difference? Because I've heard from other people, they want the ability to manually create an incident, but not manual alert creation.
Yeah, I would definitely rephrase it to manually creating the incident, because that's where we start the stopwatch of like there's an active incident. So actually looking through going through the workflow of like manually creating the alert and then the incident I was just wondering for, I guess, mostly for testing purposes, but yeah, no, that's actually, that would be the ideal for us too, is just like by creating the incident, uh, being able to eventually reach out to, whomever's on call. Cause it's actually one step closer to the metrics I'm looking for. Okay. What was my last question? No, actually that also answered another question of mine. Actually, no, I have one more. And it didn't look like this was the case, and maybe I need to read a bit better. But creating the issue automatically on an alert, is that a bit of functionality at the moment, or?
So yes, and it's not very flexible.
Okay.
So this is something we need to make more granular. It is a on or off setting.
Yes. Okay. So I did see that, and we do have it checked in our project as well. So okay.
Okay, great.
Cool.
So and I've also got a conversation with Anthony on an issue somewhere. I can go find the link, but he wants to be creating incident issues automatically for alerts with the label fire on it. And my response was, it's an all or nothing thing right now, but if that's a really important feature for you guys, then we can prioritize adding granularity to this, like adding labels to it. If alert contains this attribute, then create an issue. Or the other solution is you figure out how to only route alerts with that label to this endpoint. So
yeah, no, I think that's the appropriate solution. Like for
Okay.
us, like right now it's my intention is that it's one size fits all. I would rather the teams, and we've been creating incident issues if there's even a suspicion that there is an incident, and a lot of times we just close them out because like, okay, there wasn't anything. So incident created, closed, whatever. We basically treat them all roughly the same. Like we triage them the same, and so I don't think we need. What we have with our template, we have a pretty comprehensive template, is like a bunch of different labeling that kicks off. And then the workflow I mentioned earlier is completely manual, as it should be, because it needs a human to indicate really that, hey, we really did mitigate this, and oh yeah, it's resolved, and we've scheduled the review. So yeah, I'm happy with what I see here so far, and I think we can actually have a really solid simulation using it next week. But yeah, I mean, all my questions are answered, and I think I have everything I need to basically put a simulated incident in place, leveraging the API and creating an alert and firing things off. And we might tabletop a couple things like the actual paging and such, but
yeah,
or how we'd want to do that, because we still need to figure that out too. Like I mean, we're still going to be using PagerDuty, but how do we want to tie it into the system when we're using it? So, yeah.
I have, and then one last point for you is I've got an issue that I'm prioritizing whereby we could go one of two ways. One is we create a GitLab webhook so that a PagerDuty incident automatically creates an issue. And then the other way would be triggering the PagerDuty incident creation webhook from a GitLab issue. And that could be automatically, or that could be, a button, create PagerDuty incident, and then the GitLab issue has all information needed to route and page people correctly. Anthony surfaced that he doesn't want GitLab to be the middleman in there, because in the event that GitLab's down, that's not very helpful to you.
Well, that's the other thing. We're actually having a separate discussion of moving the project that we use to track incidents to a different instance of GitLab. So ops.gitlab.net is where we go. Well, we don't do this today because when there's a gitlab.com down event, our workflow is migrating to Google Docs, which I find to be problematic. So we would be ideally we're moving the project where we would be using this functionality to a different GitLab instance. The challenge there that I'm running into is like, we also don't update that instance as often as we update gitlab.com. So when using things like alerts and incident management built into GitLab and monitoring into these other things, we always want the latest and greatest. So we're trying to figure out a strategy of like, how do we move that project over, and then also keep the nice to have things. And so I'm not too worried about that yet in terms of this functionality residing on GitLab.com, because that my idea is to migrate it away so that we're still able to use the tooling, because that's when we need it the most. Really, is when
Yeah.
there's a completely down event like a DOS or something. So
Okay, cool. Can I help you organize for next Thursday? Do you want a review meeting before then? Do you have a particular hour of the day you would like to do the simulation? Let me know.
So there's going to be some overlap with, well, I don't care so much about my time windows, but depending on the EOC that gets added, there will be some overlap. Yeah, maybe if you could schedule a review for Monday, or no, I would say Tuesday for me.
Tuesday? Okay.
I can step you through exactly like what I'm planning. 'Cause
Great.
basically,
That
I'm
sounds
going to game master the simulation. Anthony's going to be the IMOC, and then we're still identifying an EOC. And
Okay.
I'll be doing all the alerting and stuff, and some of the simulation aspects. So, but it'd be good to have a review to make sure that we're hitting all the things that you want to see.
Perfect. And then how long would you like for the simulation day on Thursday?
So on Thursday I was gonna target like 45 minutes.
Great.
We're picking a relative. I want to pick a relatively easy is the wrong word, but a relatively like common scenario
Mm-hmm.
that would be like an S2 or an S3, where we're dealing with alerting and dealing with creating an incident and getting on Zoom and all that fun stuff. But yeah.
Okay. And
I
then,
have a question.
yeah,
Yeah.
Clement.
I know we have status page. Do we intend to kind of tie that into the simulation as well? I wasn't sure. Or is that adding too much bloat?
It might be adding a little bit too much at this point. We could do a follow-on simulation with that, and I would like to actually, because right now our workflow, we've delegated the communications to customer support team. So it used to be previously that the IMOC would also be the communications manager as well, but now I forgot what team specifically in customer support picked that up, but now they have a rotation where we page them and they handle that. And so I think, I would like to better understand. Yeah, well, that also relies on a couple things too, of like us moving to our project where we manage incidents to a separate instance of GitLab so that we can actually still use the status page if GitLab's down. So yeah, I think we could do a follow-on simulation for that, if that makes sense.
Perfect. We can add that. That'll be one of the layers we add for the second one whenever we schedule that. And Brent, last question for you so I can make sure I'm being helpful. I'll schedule it for a similar time, our review meeting on Tuesday as this, and then the simulation on Thursday. Would you like to schedule that time slot or shall I?
Yeah, I can schedule that time slot because I still need to like corral that last volunteer. So
Cool.
Yeah.
And then depending on, I know your team is globally distributed. I can do, I mean, honestly, as early as 5:30 a.m. PT.
Okay. It won't be that early because,
Okay.
thankfully Anthony's the volunteer IMOC, so it just has to be a somewhat reasonable time. So
Okay, cool. Excellent. Thank you so much.
thank
This
you.
was really helpful. I'll get the Tuesday meeting on the
Likewise.
calendar and have a great vendor meeting and weekend.
Yeah, you all as well. Thank you very much.
Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye.